Okay. We're back and ready to dive in deep into the world of music production,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically with this interview that you sent over with the Finnish producer,
Yeah.
Aleksi Perälä.
Aleksi Perälä. Yeah, that's right.
So, Paradoxonto is his current release,
I think so, yeah.
and he's known for some really kind of distinct sonic explorations.
Definitely. Yeah, he's got a very unique approach. It's not just your standard kind of electronic music.
Now, what was it about this interview that made you want to bring it to our attention?
I think one of the things that really struck me was the way Pirelli approaches music creation.
Okay.
It's not just about the technical aspects. It's like he has this whole philosophy surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
And also the interviewer mentioned Alphonse Mucha and Nikola Tesla.
Oh, wow.
So it's like this really interesting blend of art and science. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Definitely worth exploring further.
Absolutely. So just to let you know, what we're hoping to do today is really unpack Aleksi Perällä's journey.
Yeah.
We want to kind of trace the origins of, where did his musical spark come from?
Mm-hmm.
How has his creative process evolved over time?
Right.
And really dig into this idea of Kalundy, which comes up later in the interview.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing concept.
So by the end of this, hopefully you'll come away with some fresh perspectives, some new ideas that you can apply to your own creative endeavors, whatever they may be.
Exactly.
All right, let's do this. So where did it all begin for him?
Well, according to the interview, Pirelli's journey into music started way back in the summer of '88.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny. His motivation was so straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
He just wanted to hear more of the electronic music that he was enjoying on the radio.
Oh, wow.
So he decided to learn how to make it himself.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so simple but so powerful.
Absolutely.
Just that pure desire to create. For all of you out there experimenting with music at home,
Yeah.
it's a good reminder that passion is often the best starting point.
Mm-hmm. So relatable.
Totally.
Now, he did have a bit of a musical background, right? Like he wasn't coming into this completely cold.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He had been taking piano lessons since 1983,
Okay.
and that definitely gave him a solid foundation.
Right?
But then in '88, he got his first synthesizer.
Okay.
And in the interview, he says, "It was wonderful to be able to make my own sounds."
I bet.
You can just sense that excitement, like that thrill of discovering a whole new world of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And even before he had the synth, he was fascinated by echoes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Helsinki Central Railway Station was his first memorable acoustic space.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like from a young age, he was already attuned to the qualities of sound itself.
Right.
Not just melodies and harmonies, but the very essence of sound.
Fascinating. So how did he actually start making music? Did he jump right into creating his own unique stuff?
Not exactly. No,
Valid,
in
yeah.
the beginning, it was all about copying.
Mm-hmm.
He was really into those acid house sounds he was hearing.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to figure out how to make them himself.
Right. Right.
He says in the interview, "How can I make this stuff myself?"
Classic.
Yeah, like any artist, he had to learn the ropes,
Mm-hmm.
like a painter studying the masters
Yeah.
before developing their own style.
So at that point, was he driven by, wanting to get recognition or share his music with others?
Not really. It seems like his main motivation was just the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "My main motivation was, and still is, to get some more electronic music to listen to."
I love that.
It's such a pure approach, right?
Yeah.
It's not about fame or anything like that. It's just
Right.
about the love of sound.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he did eventually develop his own unique voice.
Right.
So how did that transition happen?
He describes it as a natural progression,
Mm.
from that initial phase of copying and learning the techniques.
Yeah. He's starting to experiment more.
Okay.
And find his own way of expressing himself through sound.
So it's that classic idea of you have to learn the rules before you can break them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He had to understand the building blocks before he could create something truly original.
Right. And were there any challenges he faced early on in his journey?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
He mentions that he had a bit of a short attention span.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he could focus intensely for hours on an idea, but then he'd get restless and want to move on to something new
Okay.
without necessarily going back and refining those earlier tracks.
Right.
I think a lot of creative people can relate to that.
Absolutely. I know I can.
Yeah, it's that constant pull between the excitement of the new
Mm-hmm.
and the discipline of honing the old.
It's so tempting to chase the next shiny object.
It really is.
So did that tendency to move on quickly, did that stay with him throughout his career?
For the most part, yes.
He says he still prefers to jam then and there, right now, in this time, get it done.
Oh, wow.
So that spontaneity, that immediacy is still really important to him.
Okay.
Although he did mention that about 10 years ago, he went through a phase of being more meticulous.
Oh, interesting.
But it seems like his natural inclination is toward that more immediate creative process.
Yeah.
You know, just capturing the energy of the moment.
And he also talks about going back to older tracks and how time changes your perception of them.
Yeah, he makes this really insightful observation. He says, every day is different. When you return to yesterday's track, you will bring today into it, and it will be a mixture of both.
Wow.
It's such a beautiful way of thinking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like our experiences are constantly shaping how we see things.
Right.
Even our own past creations.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a reminder that art is never truly finished.
Always evolving.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about his studio setup.
Okay.
How has that evolved over time?
So his first studio was pretty basic.
Okay.
He started with a Yamaha synthesizer. Then he moved on to a Roland workstation.
Okay.
And then an Akai MPC 2000.
Now those were some pretty groundbreaking tools for electronic music, especially in those early days.
Absolutely. They really opened up a lot of possibilities for sampling and sequencing.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think about how much technology has changed. Like nowadays, you can do all of that on a laptop.
I know, it's crazy.
But back then, these were like the cutting edge tools for shaping sound and creating those intricate rhythms.
It makes you wonder how these different tools have affected the music itself, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what would Aleksi Perälä's music sound like if he had started with a laptop?
That's a great question.
It's interesting to think about.
Definitely.
Now, there was a pretty big turning point in his setup, wasn't there?
Yeah, in the summer of 2000,
Okay.
he made a complete switch to making music entirely on a laptop.
Oh, wow.
And he hasn't looked back since.
So that was like a conscious decision, like, this is it. This is how I'm going to work from now on.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah.
He really appreciates the portability and flexibility of a laptop. You know, he can take his whole studio with him wherever he goes.
Right, which is amazing.
It's incredible how technology has democratized music production.
Absolutely. And it also makes you think about the impact on creativity. Like, having such easy access to these tools, how has that shaped the music we hear today?
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But it's definitely something to think about.
For sure. But even with the convenience of a laptop, he still has preferences for how he likes to listen to his music, right?
Yeah, he mentions that while he loves the portability of the laptop, he prefers making music on a proper sound system.
Okay.
So he can really feel the bass.
Right. Feel that full spectrum of sound.
Exactly.
But he's also realistic. He knows you can't always have the ideal setup.
Yeah, he's had to adapt to different living situations and often ends up working on headphones.
Which is something a lot of us can relate to, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Life isn't always a perfectly treated studio.
It's all about making the most of what you have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about his relationship with technology more broadly.
Okay.
He describes his setup as the simplest possible.
Yeah.
And he doesn't consider himself to be very technical.
It's interesting because he's been using digital tools for so long. But he still has a very clear perspective on the roles of humans and machines in the creative process.
How so?
He believes machines are great at raw computing power and big data,
Right.
but humans excel at connecting spiritually.
I see.
So it's like he sees this beautiful balance between the two. Technology provides the tools and the power,
Yeah.
but it's the human element that brings the soul, the emotion.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when it comes to his specific tools, it sounds like he's reached a point of real integration with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's been using the same basic setup for so long that he doesn't even think about it anymore.
Wow.
It's become an extension of himself.
Like second nature.
Exactly. He says, it works the best for me.
It's like the tool disappears.
Yeah.
And it's just the pure creative flow.
That's the ideal, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then he says something really interesting. He says, I have no tools. I am one myself, a vessel.
Yeah, that's a pretty profound statement.
What do you make of that?
I think it speaks to a certain surrender to the creative process. It's like he's not forcing anything.
Yeah.
He's allowing the music to flow through him.
Like a conduit.
Exactly. But I also wonder if it's a way of dealing with creative blocks, you know?
Oh, interesting.
It's like by externalizing the source of the ideas.
Right. It's not me, it's something else.
Right, exactly.
Which leads us to this concept of Kalundi.
Yeah.
He mentions collaborating with Kalundi, and that stuff keeps happening as a result.
It's definitely mysterious.
Yeah, very intriguing.
The interview doesn't really define what Kalundi is,
Right.
but we can get some clues from what Perälä says.
Okay, what does he say?
He talks about how for the past 5 years since encountering Kalundi, he hasn't felt like he's been creating music himself.
Oh, wow.
Instead, he's acting as a vessel for Kalundi.
So it's like this external force is driving his creativity.
It seems that way, yeah.
Wow.
He describes it as like magic with
Yeah.
ideas coming from the other side.
Okay, now that's really getting into some interesting territory.
It is, right. It's almost like a spiritual or energetic influence that's guiding his music.
And this idea of external creative inspiration, it's not entirely new in art.
No, not at all.
Think of the concept of the muse, right?
Exactly.
Like that's been around for centuries. Or even in modern times, people talk about tapping into their subconscious.
Right. It's like there's this acknowledgement that sometimes creativity comes from a place beyond our conscious control.
Yeah, it's like we're channeling something.
Exactly. And it seems like Kalundi is Perälä's way of framing that phenomenon.
Okay, I'm starting to get a sense of it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept.
So this shift to being a vessel, how does that play out in his daily routine? Like, does he have a specific schedule, or is he just waiting for the Kalundi inspiration to strike?
It's actually quite organic, it sounds like.
Okay.
He says he wakes up around 7 a.m. And then starts jamming whenever he feels like it.
So there's still an element of spontaneity, even within this framework of being a vessel.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting.
It's not like he's just passively waiting for instructions,
Right, right.
He still has to be present and engaged in the creative process. But the initial spark, the inspiration, that seems to be coming from somewhere else.
And it's important to remember that music hasn't always been his full-time focus, right?
That's right.
He's had other jobs.
He mentions having serious day jobs for most of his life.
Which is inspiring in a way, right?
Absolutely.
It shows real dedication to pursuing your passion,
Definitely.
even when you have other responsibilities.
He talks about the importance of prioritizing and being flexible to make time for music.
And that's something a lot of people can relate to, right?
For sure.
Trying to balance your creative pursuits with the demands of daily life.
It's a constant juggling act.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious about his idea of an ideal creative state. What does that look like for him?
Well, for one thing, he values silence and isolation.
Okay.
He finds that those conditions help him to focus.
Right.
And to quiet his mind.
Which makes sense, yeah.
He actually equates making music with meditation.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like this state of deep concentration and presence where he can allow the ideas to flow.
Now, he also has a bit of an unconventional view on isolation, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
He talks about being able to achieve that state of creative isolation, even in noisy environments.
Exactly. He tells this story about making a track on a train.
Oh, wow.
And he was so focused that he almost fell asleep while working.
That's amazing.
It's like he can create his own internal space.
Right, regardless of what's happening around him.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of that inner state of mind.
Absolutely. Now, how does playing live compare to his studio work?
Well, he describes playing live as classic fun.
Okay.
But he also mentions that it can disrupt his creative flow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because preparing for a live show takes time and focus.
Right.
And that can take away from the time he would normally spend generating new ideas in the studio.
It's that balance again, isn't it?
It is,
Between performing and creating.
And for him, it seems like the creative process is really important.
Yeah.
He's always exploring new sonic territories.
So when he is in the studio, what's his approach to sound design and composition?
He mainly works with sine waves.
Sine waves. Okay, break that down for me.
So sine waves are like the purest form of a sound wave. They're the building blocks of all other sounds.
Okay.
And then he uses harmonics to create more complex textures and timbres.
So harmonics are like overtones, right?
Yes.
They give a sound its unique character.
Yeah, like the difference between a trumpet and a violin.
Got it.
So Perälä starts with these very basic elements and then builds from there, creating these intricate soundscapes.
That's fascinating.
It's a very fundamental approach to sound design.
And how do those sounds compare to the ones he's creating now in collaboration with Kalundi?
He actually says that the Kalendi sounds are completely new and different.
Wow, really?
Yeah, he's never heard or created anything like them before.
So Kalendi isn't just influencing his process, it's also like introducing a whole new palette of sounds.
It seems that way.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really emphasizes the transformative nature of this collaboration.
Yeah, it's like a whole new chapter in his musical journey.
Exactly.
Now, there's another really interesting aspect to this interview. He mentions experiencing synesthesia.
Yes, that's fascinating.
So for people who aren't familiar with that term, can you explain it?
Sure, synesthesia is basically a neurological phenomenon where stimulation of one sense triggers an experience in another sense.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, Peralta says he can hear sounds when he sees movement.
Like if he sees a GIF, he hears something.
Exactly.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's like the boundaries between the senses are blurred.
Right.
Which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It challenges our typical understanding of how perception works.
It makes you wonder, are there other people out there who experience the world in this way and just haven't really put it into words?
It's definitely possible.
And this experience of synesthesia seems to tie into a larger belief he has about the interconnectedness of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He believes that it is all connected and that we are holistic beings.
Okay, so what does he mean by that?
I think he's saying that our physical, mental, and emotional experiences are all intertwined. They're not separate compartments.
It's all one system.
Exactly. And this perspective really informs his understanding of sound, particularly within the context of Kalendi.
Okay, how so?
He sees sound as being much more than we typically understand it to be. He explains that every Kalendi frequency is a wavelength.
Yeah.
And these wavelengths aren't just connected to sound, they're also linked to color, distance, weight, speed.
Wow, that's getting pretty deep.
And he even says that they affect the human body, mind, and soul.
So it's like sound is this incredibly powerful force.
Exactly. It's not just something we hear,
right?
It's something we feel and experience on a much deeper level.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a very expanded view of sound.
It makes you wonder, what else are we missing?
Absolutely. It challenges us to rethink our relationship with sound and how it affects us.
For sure. Now, I want to touch on his motivations for creating art.
Okay.
What does he see as his purpose?
Well, he talks about feeling a sense of disconnect from the world and from other people, but he finds familiarity and control in making music.
So it's like a safe space for him.
It seems that way, yeah.
Okay.
But it's more than that. He also has this deep desire to bring something good into this world.
Oh, wow.
He sees that as his calling.
So it's not just about self-expression, it's about making a positive impact.
Exactly. And that's something I find really inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he's using his art to connect with something larger than himself.
To make a difference.
Definitely.
Now, finally, let's talk about his vision for the future of music.
Okay.
The interviewer asks him about that, and his response is pretty intriguing.
It is, yeah.
What does he say?
Well, first he acknowledges that music has been around for a long time.
Right.
And that its basic concepts have persisted through the centuries. But he also says that he has a faint idea of new kind of music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he can hear it in his head.
Wow.
But he hasn't been able to create it yet.
So there are still new frontiers to explore, even for someone like him.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that there are countless possibilities for musical innovation.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It is, right.
And for him, making Kalendi music is all about having an empty mind.
Yeah, he talks about letting go and allowing the music to emerge.
And he sees the pure, unlimited power within Kalendi as the key to that process.
It's like Kalendi is the gateway to a whole new world of sound.
That's a powerful image.
It really is.
So from those early days of just wanting more electronic music to listen to this current vision of Kalendi and these new forms of music, Aleksi Perälä's journey has been quite remarkable.
It really has, yeah.
I mean, he's gone from being a student of sound to almost becoming a conduit for it.
Exactly. And his story offers so much insight into creativity and innovation.
Absolutely.
And the power of sound itself.
You know, thinking about his reflections on synesthesia and the interconnectedness of everything, and this idea of music evolving beyond its current forms.
It really makes you wonder, what if we're only scratching the surface of what music can be?
Right. What if there are entire sonic landscapes out there that we haven't even imagined yet?
And what if we all have the potential to tap into that in our own unique ways?
That's a great point.
It's like Perällä's journey is an invitation to explore.
Yeah, to open our minds and ears to new possibilities.
Absolutely. If you're intrigued by what we've talked about today, I highly recommend checking out Perel's music.
Yeah, especially his latest release, Paradoxonia.
Definitely. And you might also find it interesting to explore the works of Alphonse Mucha and Nikola Tesla.
Oh, right. Those are the figures mentioned in the interview.
Yeah, I think there might be some connections there, some shared sensibilities with Perel's vision.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to stay up to date with his work, you can check out his Facebook page.
Perfect. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive.
I agree, yeah.
Thanks for sharing this interview with us.
Of course. I'm glad we could explore it together.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Until next time.
Cheers.